how I became involved and what orangutans actually do. An interaction with orangutan can do to just enrich your life. Orangutans, I got back from Borneo yesterday, so I'm just full of orangutans right now. They're just the best.
At the moment you're projecting the image.
Sorry, thank you. But I first went to Borneo in 2008, and my daughter Kristen was 25 years old. And in 2007 she was travelling, she was in Amsterdam, I was a single mum, she was the love of my life, as all your children are, she was my reason for being, and I got a telephone call that she had been killed while she was travelling to work in Amsterdam, and my whole world absolutely collapsed. I'm incredibly outgoing and gregarious as I am normally, but all of that stopped and I became completely agoraphobic. I cried for 3 years straight. I just didn't stop. I just couldn't leave the house. I could never have spoken in front of you guys. I couldn't meet new people. I was just kind of, living each day in complete grief. I tried to commit suicide twice. I was just an absolute mess, and I had a dear friend of mine, a guy called Steele, who makes documentaries about animals and made one about orangutans, and he came over to see me about 18 months after Kristen was killed, and we had dinner, and he looked at me and he knew that I was just a basket case. And one of the things that I learned through losing my daughter is that it's incredibly difficult for other people to cope with you. They just want to run screaming from the room. They have no idea what to say to you. So people say the weirdest things, and you just learn to accept that they're trying to reach out to you, and to not be oversensitive. And so, you hear really, really strange things and you just become grateful that they're actually making an effort to stay in the room and talk to you. So Stephen said to me the weirdest thing that anybody had said to date, and that was, I'm going to take you to Borneo and the orangutans are going to help to heal you. And I was a huge animal person, but I was going to live in my house till the day I died and never leave, and there was just no way I was going anywhere. And so I made pathetic excuses. He rang me when he went back to Perth. He lives in Perth, and he organised dates. The first dates were actually the dates that were at the same time as the court case against the man that killed Kristen. And so I had a completely legitimate excuse. And then he rang back again and he changed the dates. And again, I had some other excuse, and that went on. And I just ran out of excuses. I just didn't understand why he kept on going, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And so eventually, I think I was turning 50, and I decided it might be really good to actually get out of my comfort zone and to go where I knew nobody, and how cool it would be to see orangutans. And so I went on this trip, and it's a trip similar to ones I take other people on now. And I went into the Borneo jungle, and I spent the first part of the week with wild orangutans and rehabilitated orangutans, and it was extraordinary. It was like a week in a David Attenborough documentary, and I was absolutely mesmerised, but I still had a completely dead heart. I felt absolutely no happiness. I could fake it, but inside there was just nothing at all. And then I went to the Orangutan Foundation International Care Centre, which is a place that I now support and why I started the foundation here in Australia. And I got to go to what I will call kindy. It's called chippadunk, but it's the little 4, 5, 6-year-old orangutans, and they're all orphans. Their mothers have all been killed. I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a minute. But there was a little orangutan in the corner, and his name was Faisal. And Faisal was 3 years old. He was completely bald, which I now know, but didn't then, that it was through complete malnutrition and trauma and depression. And he was so traumatised that he couldn't climb trees. And he was so sweet. And so, of course, orangutans look at you, they look into your eyes, and they look straight into your soul. And they read people way better than we do. And so I was looking at this little orangutan going, oh my God, he's so beautiful. And he was looking at me going, oh, that poor woman. That poor woman, I better go give her some love. So he actually came up to me, and he climbed up into my arms. This sounds like, a violin moment. I swear this happened. He climbed up into my arms, and and we looked at each other in the eyes, and I swear I hadn't felt a moment of happiness since Kristen had been killed. And these lightning bolts of happiness just shot through me. It was an absolutely physical reaction, and so that little orangutan really did give me back my life, gave me back my purpose. I spent the next 2 days at the care centre, and there was 2 orangutans, Faisal and Krista, who are now still my friends, and they're big orangutans, but they hung out with me, they took me into the forest, and we just played. And I came back and cancelled all my therapy and my grief counselling, and which I'd been doing weekly for a very, very long time. And yeah, I was me again. You know, I was laughing and I was happy and actually wanted to be here. And I didn't actually know what to do to thank them, but I just felt, and still do feel, absolute gratitude to Faisal and to orangutans for what they did for me. And so I researched the trip that I did and got in touch with the care centre and started doing trips, eco-tours to Borneo, just a couple of times a year. It was my way of raising money to help them, and it was the only thing I knew what to do. And so I started doing that, and I still do that. And anyone that's interested, I can talk to you about that later. But during my time there, I don't know, does anybody know who Dr. Birute Galdikas is? Dr. Galdikas is the Jane Goodall of orangutans. So back in the early 70s, there was 3 women who all went to LA University, all studied primatology, and all wanted to go out and do research with primates, with great apes. Diane Fossey was mentored by Louis Leakey, and she went out and, as you know, studied gorillas. Jane Goodall was the other woman. She went out to Tanzania and, as you all know, studied chimpanzees. And Dr. Birute Galdikas is the least known of them because she's stayed in the field, so she's been there since 1971. She went out to Borneo, where no one had ever done research before, because her passion was to study orangutans. She went in 1971 in like a dugout canoe with her partner at the time and just one local Dayak man. And what I do in 3.5 hours took her 2 months of cutting through jungle. She had no idea where orangutans were. She didn't know nobody knew what they ate, what they did. They were such solitary, such shy creatures that no one knew anything. So she went there, and she's been researching orangutans since then. And she's taught the world everything we know about orangutans, and I am blessed to work with her. So in 2012, I was there with an eco tour, and it was the first time that I actually met her. And she asked me to go out into a forest with her, and it was called Rawakuna Legacy Forest, but it's now called the Orangutan Legacy Forest. And it was 7,900 hectares, so a huge forest owned by a village group. And the palm oil plantations wanted to buy it, and there was 200 wild orangutans living there, and they agreed with her that if she raised, it was $750,000 by X date, that they would sell it to us instead of the palm oil plantations. And she was $250,000 short, and she'd fundraised and fundraised and fundraised, and she'd exhausted all her avenues. So she took me out into the middle of this forest and sat me down and told me that story and said, I don't know what you can do to help, but if there's anything you can do in Australia, please, can you try? We need $250,000 by December. So I heard myself say, don't worry, I'll go back and I'll raise the money and I'll do it for you. I had no idea how. And so I came back to Australia, and it was close to the end of 2012. And you know, I was really excited because it was like my purpose. And I started Orangutan Foundation International Australia, and it took a few months to do all the normal bureaucracy, the stuff you've got to do for governments and charity. And then, oh look, I think Kristen, my daughter, helped me because there's no way I could have done it on my own. But I raised the $250,000, and so we bought the Orangutan Legacy Forest, and we So that was the start of Orangutan Foundation International Australia, and that's why we actually started it. But you know, we've gone on from there, and it's been 3 years now, and I've raised over $1 million, and it really, the difference is just extraordinary. That much money in Borneo does so much to help the work, and we've been able to buy a lot of forest, renew all the enclosures at the care centre, and so it makes me so excited. But I would love to tell you a little bit more about the work that we do in Borneo. So Orangutan Foundation International is the oldest orangutan charity in the world, and we have a care centre in Borneo in central Kalimantan, We currently have 330 orphan orangutans, and they're there primarily because of palm oil. And I'm assuming that most of you will know some or a lot about palm oil and just the horror and destruction that it's causing. But basically, mother orangutans and their babies have the strongest bond, even stronger than humans have. They stay with their babies for 8 years, and nothing separates them, and the mother fights to the death. So what's happening at the moment is that the palm oil plantations are deforesting at a crazy rate. 80%'s gone in the last 20 years of all the Borneo rainforest. And then the workers get paid only a small amount, but they're paid a bounty to kill the mothers. And so they might get an extra $20 to have killed the mother, but then where the money is made after that is they then take the babies, these tiny, beautiful babies that are supposed to be with their mothers for 8 years, and their mother teaches them everything, absolutely everything. They're completely, absolutely helpless. And these people then rip the baby, screaming. I'm not being dramatic, they're screaming because they've just seen their mother killed. And they take them and they might get $50 to sell that baby into the exotic pet trade. And I don't know if you know, but after drugs and weapons, the illegal exotic pet trade is now the biggest moneymaker in the world, and orangutans unfortunately are the most desired pet. And so they might get $50, that worker in that palm oil plantation, which is an enormous amount. They're very, very poor people. But by the time it gets over to Saudi Arabia or to Gordon Ramsay, who owns a pet orangutan, Paris Hilton owns a pet orangutan, and of course the big Arab sheiks and all those wealthy people, it's a real status symbol. And so by the time that poor little orangutan gets there, it's worth $200,000, but only 2 out of 10 make it, because they'll stuff them into suitcases with drips and oxygen masks, and then put them in with their luggage. The way they transport them, because it's completely illegal, is horrifying, and so most of them die. Probably 2 out of 10 we save or rescue, and those, and I inverted comma, the lucky ones end up with us at our care centre. And if you do the maths on us getting 2 out of 10, and every mother being killed, if you actually do the equation on that, it's terrifying. So we get the little babies and they come in to our orphan care centre and they're given a surrogate mother. So it's local women. You know, we can't do that with volunteers, because if you go in there for 3 months or 6 months, it's like you taking a foster baby for 6 months and then just saying, oh, look, I'm going now, I don't want you anymore. So we have to have local women to look after the babies, and they are just extraordinary. They absolutely love the orangutans like their babies, and they then teach them absolutely everything that they need to know. But it takes about 10 years to teach all the skills to one little orangutan that they need to live free again in the wild. And how they're selected really is based on personality as well, because orangutans, they can be shy, they can be gregarious, they can be helpless, they can be strong, and so they all have different personalities. So depending on the strength of their personality and their independence is how they're chosen to be released back into the wild. But before we can release them, we have to buy a forest. The Indonesian government has to approve every single release, and we have 100 orangutans right now ready to be released back into the wild, and they're going to allow us to do 20 in the next 2 years. So it's terrifying, it's insane, and we're not allowed to release them to the national parks. So the only way we can rehabilitate and release them now is by buying the forest as well. So it's a twofold thing. It's running the care centre. It costs over $1 million a year just to actually feed and staff the care centre for the orangutans. We've got a full hospital, and then you've got to go out and fundraise to buy the land as well. So it's a big thing. But the joy of going out on a release and seeing an orangutan released back into the wild is just incredible. So yeah, there's a lot of work there, and the people that are there are just so dedicated. They're just inspirational. So I guess being here, you feel helpless, but there is so much that you can do to help, and the obvious one is please, as a consumer, read your labels before you buy products. I know that it's a hassle, and the names are hidden. I've got lots of palm oil cards here if anyone wants them, but there's also an amazing app. Do any of you know the Palm Oil Investigations app on your phone? Anyone that doesn't, please ask me. It's a free download, and it's called POI barcode palm oil scan or something. I can give it to you. And so you go into your supermarket and you just scan the product, and it comes up in 4 categories, you know, bad, palm oil, uncertified, you know, RSPCO, I'll get something here, but all the different levels of palm oil. But then they also have the alternate products. So it's really only the first 2 or 3 times that you're shopping that it might take you half an hour or 45 minutes more than normal, but it is so worth it if you would do it, because if you just think of the orangutans and the pygmy elephants and the Asian rhinos and the proboscis monkeys and all the animals that are losing their lives due to palm oil. And once you've actually done that shop 3 or 4 times, then you know, don't buy Kraft, buy Dick Smith, don't buy this, buy that, and then you just know, and it becomes natural. So that's the most important thing we can do here in Australia. Of course, you can foster orangutans if you'd like. It's $100 a year, and that money goes to the orangutan you foster. It's tax deductible. You can go on an eco tour, because once you've been, you know, you can spread the word. You can volunteer in Borneo if you're interested, but the main thing here is palm oil, and so if I could just ask you all to please become, you know, considered in your shopping, because the orangutans need our help so badly. So yeah, that's about it. But does anyone have questions about orangutans, about anything?
Just that palm in general, is palm oil, like say if you compare it to like coconut oil and like all the other types of farming overseas, but it's not in the media, is palm oil far worse? Like,
Well,
why is palm oil?
okay, well palm oil grows best and has the highest yield when it is planted in peat swamp, and peat swamp only exists in Borneo and Sumatra and is the orangutan's habitat. The reason that they use palm oil in products rather than coconut oil or safflower or whatever it is because it's by far the cheapest, by far the cheapest, so they make the most profit, and also it has the highest yield of any oil. So I mean they're getting the most for it, but also in food products, for example, if you're buying chips or biscuits or whatever, it's the property that gives that crunch in all your toiletries, your shampoos, conditioners, laundry detergents, dishwashing detergents, soap. Sodium lauryl sulfate is palm oil, and so everything that soaps, everything that bubbles is palm oil, so you know that you think it's in foods only, but it's in every bit of makeup that we use. I mean, if you research it, then you can actually find alternatives. Sometimes it's a bit tough, but you can eventually find them. But yeah, it's because they make the most money by far. Coconut oil. Oh, it's also the highest in saturated fat. So forgetting the orangutans, it's so bad for us. But coconut oil is fantastic and you know, probably the most healthy, but it's far more expensive. Olive oil obviously is out of the question, that's too expensive. So yeah, it's just corporate greed.
Yeah, I've seen it.
You know, even when I go to Borneo, the poor macaques, they're chained up on people's roofs in the hot sun as pets.
Is it illegal to own one? And if so, why aren't Gordon Ramsay and Recipient interested?
It's illegal in Indonesia to own an orangutan and as a pet or for any reason, but all they get is a written warning. That's it. But in other countries, if they get, I mean, like in the UK, I don't know the law, but I'm assuming it's the same as Europe and America, and they just get a zoo license. And they're quite easy to get. They're harder to get in Australia, but I know in America they're a piece of cake. If you want to own a tiger or you know, whatever it happens to be, if you have money and the right connections, you can get a zoo license like that. And so I would imagine that's how Gordon Ramsay did it. He bought a pet orangutan for his son.
Has your organisation considered running campaigns against these kinds of celebrities who are doing so much damage by
Yeah.
having these?
the celebrities, I mean, we do on our Facebook pages and generally, you know, we try to get awareness out there. But no, we don't actually run campaigns against particular people, because I guess our main campaign that we keep going with is palm oil. But yeah.
It's so hard to know though, because palm oil comes under so many names, and it's not
220 names.
to be
Yeah,
labelled as
yeah.
such.
We've just
So, yes.
I'm working with Zoos Victoria at the moment, and we've had the mandatory palm oil bill go before Parliament twice now. Nick Xenothon, before he became an independent, I worked with a little bit, and it was him that was trying to push through mandatory food labelling, but palm oil basically was what I was working with him on.
So would that mean
And-
that everything that had palm oil in it has to specify?
Well, yeah. So what happened is the bill got passed by, I'm not very good at politics, but by the upper house. The bill would be passed, and then it goes to the lower house, and then all the food lobbyists would come in from Malaysia, and the palm oil lobbyists, and they had so much money, the Malaysians and the Indonesians and the Singaporeans, that they would just make the bill go away and it would be voted out. So that's happened twice now. So what Zoos Victoria are launching it like this week or next week, and while I was up there I was getting Dr. Gaudakas to sign the documentation. But what they're going to do, which fingers crossed will work this time, is that every time they've tried to do oils labelling on its own, it hasn't worked. But at the moment sugar is so trendy, everyone wants to know about sugar and how bad sugar is, and there's sugar movies. And so what they've done is they've written a bill which includes sugars and oils. And so they haven't actually specified which oils or which sugars or fructose or whatever they are, and they're hoping to slip the oil legislation through with the sugar, because all the politicians want to know about sugar right now. So fingers crossed. So that goes before Parliament in November, and so.
Is there anything consumers can do to help?
At this stage, not, but possibly yes. And I mean, I'm talking with them again. I've just got back from Borneo yesterday. I've been away, so I'll be talking with them again tomorrow and finding out where it's up to. But they are going to do a launch in October, and I think in a week or two, and then I think there'll be a lot of advertising. There was a big rally in Melbourne last week, and so fingers crossed there'll be a lot of publicity, and then you bring your local members. Yeah. I'll be putting it on our Facebook pages and website.
I just want to ask about your eco tools, like
Oh, okay. They're fabulous. I'm a bit biased. You go for a week, and so you meet me in Jakarta, and then we fly over to Borneo, and we go straight to a port called Kumai, and then we go on Kropoks, which are like little wooden African Queenie kind of wooden boats. We go up the Sekonya River right remotely into the jungle of Borneo, and we stay there for the first 3 nights. And so I introduce you to wild orangutans, take you to feeding stations where there are many wild orangutans, and also ex-captives, ones that we've released. And then Camp Leakey, I don't know if anyone's heard of Camp Leakey, but it is the most famous orangutan place in the world that's open to the general public. So the first 3 days we spend going in and actually meeting orangutans as they should be. And there are so many mothers and babies, and it's just beautiful to see them in the wild as it should be. And then I am absolutely blessed to be one of 2 people in the world that can take my group into the care centre. So then we spend 2 days at the care centre, which is completely closed to the general public. You could go and you could stand at the front door with a cheque for $100,000, and they don't let you in. It's like a closed working rehabilitation facility. But you do get to come in for 2 days, and then I take you and I show you how all the rehabilitation works. So you go to the neonatal area, which is the really little new babies. You go to the infants. It's like kindy. I take you through to the big kids, like primary school kids, and then we go to forest school, which is kind of like high school, and then I take you to a soft release site, which is when orangutans have been earmarked for release. They go through a process that takes a year to be dehumanised, which is weird because we have to be one-on-one with them to get them to that stage, but then they can't be dependent on us before they're released. They have to be completely independent again. So you actually get to see, I guess, the whole gamut. You see them go through rehabilitation and how they're released, and then you actually see them back in the wild. And it really is like spending a week in a David Attenborough documentary. It's extraordinary. And if you're interested, I'll just give you a card and just email me. I do have a waiting list, but when I say waiting list, that comes sound daunting. It just means that it's the only way you can find out about the tours when I announce dates, because otherwise, because it is an extraordinary trip, I'm really selective about who I take. I want to know people are going for the right reasons and that they care, not just someone wanting a Facebook photo. I'd love to take you if you want to come. Oh, and it's not absolutely 100% not for profit. Every cent goes to charity. Look, it varies because it really depends on when I can go and also when I can get the accommodation in the jungle, because there's only one lodge for the whole world in the jungle, and I have to book it all out. But it is normally April, May, and then either September or October. Well, in Borneo it's hot all year round because where we go is actually on the equator, so there's no not hot time. It's just that the time that we don't go is probably November through to March because it's the wet season, and orangutans don't like the rain, and also you don't want to be walking around in the rain for a week. But mainly it's because the orangutan sightings, aren't good for you. If you're going to go, you want to see them.
I've actually got a couple of questions. You mentioned before that the mothers teach them everything in the first 8 years. If they take the babies when they're that young, they haven't been taught anything. So how do they live?
They
how
don't.
do they feed themselves? How do they go to the toilet? How do they do anything if they haven't been taught?
They don't.
They just sit in a cage and just...
They die. They die of depression. They die because they're fed rice. And that's it. Or condensed milk. There was a little one called Booty. I don't know if any of you know of Booty. Last year, and I'll cry if I talk about Booty. This little orangutan was kept in a box, and as he grew, the box wasn't made bigger. So in the end, he was like in almost like a coffin. And this woman who supposedly loved him fed him nothing but condensed milk. That was all he had. And orangutans, are fed, breast milk and then leaves and bark and. Certainly not sugar and certainly not condensed milk, and this poor little guy just blew up and was so swollen, and he was saved and he's alive and he's okay now. But yeah, they can't do anything for themselves, so if they don't have someone...
So no one looks after them, they're just dumped in a cage?
Well, they're normally hidden. They're fed, they're dressed up as babies in human clothing, and they're treated as a novelty. And when they're babies, they're so gentle and so sweet. But what happens when they're about 3 or 4 years old, they get quite boisterous, and they're very, very, very strong. An orangutan is 10 times stronger than a human. So by the time they're 4 years old, and remember they've got 4 hands, because they use their feet as hands as well, they can destroy your lounge room in 10 minutes while you're out. They'll rip everything out of your kitchen, and they're just having fun, they're just being curious, they're just being orangutans. And so they become a pest then, and they're not such a fun pet to have around, so then they're discarded, and that's how we actually get some of them. They're actually handed in, and we have a no questions asked policy, because if you start asking where did you get this orangutan, they won't bring them in. Yeah. So.
And what about sustainable palm oil versus conflict palm oil? Is there such a thing as
Yes,
sustainable?
yes, there is, but it gets really complicated. Are you sure? You sure you want me to say? Okay, there's it's kind of complicated. I don't want to confuse it too much, but.
I only have a couple of minutes too, unfortunately.
Okay, I'll speed talk and hopefully not confuse you. There's uncertified palm oil, and that's the devil. That's like, we don't want uncertified palm oil ever. That's the companies that are deforesting and just destroying our planet. Then there is 2 other kinds. You'll see 2 different things there. You'll see RSPO, which is Roundtable of Sustainable Palm Oil. Now that sounds great, but it's actually not that great, because like the heart tick, RSPO, I'll call it, is an organisation. It's not a type of oil. So anybody can become a member of Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, and you pay a yearly fee, and it's kind of like spin. It makes you look good. But you can actually advertise that you are RSPO, Roundtable Sustainable Palm Oil, and all we know as consumers is we're seeing the word sustainable, so we think this is great. But to actually put that on your can or whatever, you only need to be using 1% certified palm oil, and you can mix it with 99% uncertified. And so we all think we're doing the right thing, when in actual fact, we're not necessarily. But I mean, when I say that, it can also be like 60% certified, but it can be a mix. It's called mass balance. It can be a mix. So it's not ideal. It's better than nothing, but it's not ideal. But what we actually want to look for is CSPO, and that's Certified Sustainable Palm Oil, and that's not an organisation, that's the actual oil. And what that means is that those companies that are using that have actually signed no deforestation policies. So they might have in the past, but they actually are no longer doing it. We, Orangutan Foundation International, go in and we try to get them to also sign zero kill policies, so that when an orangutan is found on their plantations, they'll call us and we can go rescue it rather than it being killed, because the locals are really scared of orangutans. And so I've had a blank, I was going somewhere with that. But yeah, certified sustainable palm oil is actually able to be traced back to the plantation that it was bought from. So that's what we want, because that's the only way we can know.
Do you think that's operating legally, or do you think it's subject to corruption?
It's all subject to corruption, but it's the closest we've got, and there's never going to be a time with no palm oil. I mean, we're kidding ourselves if we think that. So it's the best of a bad.